All right. Hello. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me on this, our 11th episode of hopefully many episodes of Bard Advice, a D&D-esque based advice podcast where I, Charles Chaz Yazik, the DM, the Bard, do my best to answer questions, any kind of advice, or anything else coming in. Hello, everyone. Sorry I wasn't here last week. Thanks everybody for joining. Hey, Chris and River and all the regulars. Thanks for coming back and joining us yet again. So I actually made some notes this week, if you can believe that. It might have served me well to be off for a week. It gave me a little time to organize things. So at the top of the hour, just want to go over a couple of things. Notably, the email, which is bardadvice@gmail.com. It also looks like bardadvice. And funny, on that note, I actually got a submission from a friend of the podcast. His name is Dale with Blackbird Studio Design. And he made this thing for me. And for us, really. It's for all of us. It's for the podcast. So that's pretty dope, huh? I like that. I did put a link to that to his website in the description. So I just thought that was pretty neat. But anyway, yeah, the email is bardadvice@gmail.com. Please send questions. Also, you can grab yourself some merch over at manshorts.com. I need to get in touch with Kraken about dice because I would like to do some more of those this year. That's the goal anyway. What is the mineral? What is that mineral that gives you a choice but is just out of reach? Either or. Grab merch at manshorts.com. And then also my PayPal, Venmo, and Cash App are Yazik. If anyone wants to contribute to the album, also any super chats are super appreciated, as well as any of the members in the chat, members of the channel. That kind of stuff really helps us a lot. Those kind of things help us a little bit more directly. Bard ASMR, well, thank you. I've heard that before, you know. I was always told that I should work in radio. I would love to do voice work, but you know, when do I have time? Justin and I are looking at this new script we just finished. Yeah, I might be able to a little bit. How's that? Is that a little better? That's really as much as I can go without getting too crazy. Okay, so those are all of the things. At least all of the things at the opening. I made a couple of other notes. We've got the Super Bowl this weekend. I don't know if anybody in here really cares about that. I don't have much of a investment or dog in the fight in the Super Bowl, per se. I'm a Jags fan. It's tough year for us. It was a weird year for us. You know, I was happy to end the season the way that we did, and then of course we made it into the playoffs, which was crazy. Didn't expect that. Trevor looks great. I think that we're going to probably dominate the AFC South for the next several seasons. And then also just another note in sports news, really only because it's relevant, not like I plan on doing that moving forward, but LeBron passed Kareem in total points, which is a big deal. That's a huge deal. He's now the scoring champ of the league, which is going to make it a lot more difficult for LeBron haters to deny him of his GOAT status, or at least for having him in the conversation. Oh, you're a Browns fan? Yeah, so you know. Yeah, I feel like there's a particular solidarity between like the teams that are always so losing all the time, like the Browns, the Jags, the Lions, the Bills too. Like the Bills looked good this year up to a point, but then they just kind of and I think back to when I was a kid and they went to the Super Bowl 4 years in a row and lost. Just so crazy. Okay, so enough about that stuff. Anybody watching The Last of Us? I made a note for that because my wife and I have been watching that. I never played the game. The Last of Us probably plays better to this crowd than the Super Bowl for sure, or basketball. Um, the Last of Us? Anybody? I'm enjoying it. I will say, I don't think that it's like this. I don't know. I feel like it got overhyped for me. People, because I didn't really watch it until a couple of them had already been on. Yeah, I enjoy it. I think it's a solid zombie show. I don't think that it's this like life changing. Maybe people were really hyped just because like they had played the game, and from what I can see, at least from what I've seen just in passing, like it looks like it's pretty true to the game. So, yeah. Um, Excuse me. I've enjoyed it. I think it's a great show. I think Nick Offerman's great. I think that the main guy, what's his name? Pascal, the Mandalorian. He's great, obviously. Bella Ramsey is strong. Melanie Linsky, I like her. And, the general feel of the show is good. Like, it looks like it's well made. It seems to be well written. I've enjoyed it so far. I don't think that it's like the next Breaking Bad or whatever. I think some people are treating it like it's like, oh man, this show, oh man, and it's like, it's good, it's good. I would recommend it, but I mean, don't expect your life to change. It's just a zombie show, you know. And then also another just quick note. I just for the first time played and finished the the Miles Morales Spider-Man game, and it was so fun. I miss those. I haven't played a Spider-Man game in a long time, and I love those games. It's super fun, but also kind of insane. The ending. I'm not going to talk about it because I don't want to do any spoilers because I know that it really only came out like within the last couple months. So if anybody's not played it, I'll just say that it's crazy. The ending is crazy. Oh, and season 2 of Vox Machina is people seem to like that. Yeah, I've not seen any of it. Been diving into ChatGPT, converting Destiny 2 aspects and fragments into something usable in Destiny D&D. Yeah, ChatGPT. That's another interesting thing that we're going to be facing in this TTRPG world over the next couple of years. I'm really interested to see like what people are producing with that. Oh yeah, it's on sale right now in the Steam store on PC at least. I'd recommend it. I had a lot of fun with it. I will say that it is a little short. Like the main story, it does feel a little bit like a chunky DLC as opposed to a full game, but it's still really fun. And the regular Spider-Man's on sale too. Also, I last week I made a quick note for this to correct. I don't know why it's that big of a deal and why it bugged me so much, but last week I I referred to a palate cleanser as an aperitif, and that is not what I meant to say. An aperitif is a drink. I meant to say sorbet, and I don't know why I said aperitif, but word salad. Figure that out. And I don't really know why it's that important for me to correct, but I made a note for it. So, and also I went ahead and moved forward with producing my my OGL diss track, No GL, which, as you can see here, I made some art for. I am done recording it. It is being mixed and mastered at the moment. I debated not releasing it because I thought, well, now that they've seemingly walked it back, is it not maybe relevant or not maybe fair to do it? But I decided that I think it's important for it to exist for posterity's sake. So I made it. I don't have a release date for it. As I said, it is done being recorded, but you expect that within the next week or so. But I think that's everything as far as like my little announcements and updates and stuff. Finally got to be here for the live when you prop Mini Village in episode 6. Oh, hey, how's it going? Oh, Rainbow the Flamboyant Clown. That's an awesome name. Yeah, the Mini Village. Yeah, that stuff's so cool. I every time I'm in the pet store with my wife, I see it and I'm like, oh, and I'm like, my brain just starts going a million miles an hour because it's like, it's begging for it, really. Halifax is in the house. Oh, hey, how's it going? We have just something with us in Canada. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Oh, check this too. Look at this. This is a thing. This is from my cousin. It says love and ASL. Pretty cool. All right, let's get into some questions. Let's do it. I've got myself a little list of the question askers. So let's get into it. Our first question is from Ryan. And Ryan asks, as a DM, what is your favorite creature to play as? Thank you for the question, Ryan. So specific creature, probably gonna be Beholder. And this is why. They're lawful evil. So a more vague response would be pretty much any lawful evil monster. I see people already are saying in the comments there's a Hydra, Illithids. I don't know if that's the correct pronunciation of that, by the way. Which song? Beholders specifically, just because there's versatility, I think, in their attacks. I mean, how do you beat? The Ice Talks are so OP. It's such good crowd control. It's like, and also I made a list of, or I didn't rather make a list, I rather curated one. I found this article of somebody that had broken down what a lawful evil character was, or rather examples of what a lawful evil person would be. I thought it was really cool, so I saved it and wanted to share it. So this is cool, like, and this is why it's cool as a DM to DM these type of monsters. A lawful evil person / monster will follow the letter of the law even if it hurts people unjustly, will use the law for their own selfish ends, believes they or someone like them should be in charge, believes resistance to the state should be punished harshly, believes that justice, freedom, and equality are not necessary for a functional society, will prioritize order, security, and stability in society above all else. That's perfect D&D stuff. Believes rules are made to be followed, refuses to bend the rules to help those in need, and seeks powers and control over others. So, I think that kind of makeup lends itself to, I think, the most interesting villains, right? Like Vader's lawful evil, or like Magneto, because part of it is that they don't think what they're doing is evil. They think that, or even if they do recognize that it's evil, they feel like it justifies the ends justify the means. Sheriff of Nottingham, yeah, that's another one. They're just so easy to hate. Lawful evil sounds like any lawyer or politician. Well, I don't know about any lawyer. Definitely most politicians. Magneto, yeah. So I really like that concept, at least from a DM perspective, as for things for them to fight. Especially if they can be in an environment where they have to follow the rules of this person, like in a Beholder's Cave. You're kind of slave to whatever's going on in that world, not only from the monster himself, but also like the environment and the way that they fight you. So, all right. Gustavo Fring. Yeah, maybe. I don't know, though. Because, like, I mean, what was really his incentive other than money? I mean, I guess money being an incentive is technically lawful evil, depending on the society you're in. Lawful and chaotic good evil character, evil neutral always confuses me when making characters. Yeah, it can definitely be confusing. One of the things I like to do about that with alignment is I like to try and attach characters to alignment because it kind of helps understand it more. The neutral ones are the more tough ones, like the distinction between like pure neutral and like neutral good is like, is there even one? Crime is just business. Yeah, I think that the instinct is that chaotic evil characters would give you the most freedom. And like, I guess that they do technically as to like what they would do, as to how evil they could be. It really just removes your ceiling of evil if they're chaotic evil. Whereas with lawful evil, it's like, I think much more sinister and systemic. So yeah, I mean, specific monster favorite is Beholder. But really any kind of monster that's lawful evil, I think is, I don't know if neutral is necessarily a cop out. I think it depends on how you play the character. I think that it can be. But I mean, like, it would be kind of funny if you had like a neutral bard or something that was just like incredibly aloof to everything. I think that if you build it up enough in RP, you can make up for it. Sometimes, yeah, neutral might feel, but I mean, you're talking to a guy who's been playing CN since I figured out what alignment was, you know, like, not to say that I won't run other characters, but chaotic neutral, I think, affords you the most freedom as a character. It affords you the most flexibility, per se, not only as a character yourself, but among your party and with the other players. So, hopefully that answers the question, Ryan. Thank you for the question. Lawful evil has a code. It's just an evil code, like the Sith law. Chaotic evil would defy it. Yeah. Looking to get a pair of Raycons. Get the everydays. They're, I think, the best overall. Neutral is either above or below the question of good, evil, law, or chaos. Well, okay, let's move on. We've got a question, if you can believe this, from a Chris. Actually, two of our questions tonight are from Chris because it just, you know, I feel like at this point it's statistically impossible to not get at a minimum one question per episode, if not two, from a Chris. So let's jump in to that one. It's a little more in depth than the first one. So Chris asks, what are your thoughts on taking the official campaigns and reworking them into your own? I bought the starter kit to teach my son how to play. It's a good dad. And after one session, he got bored with it, so I considered taking the story, tweaking some characters and things, and turning it into one of our sessions. Yeah, I encourage that for sure. I'll be honest with you, Chris. Most every game I've played is homebrew. I don't think that there's anything wrong with modules, with pre-written stuff. Obviously, some good stuff has been made, particularly in the last decade. But most of the games that I have participated in, whether running them or playing in them, was homebrew. Because it's just the most fun. And also, had you mentioned? Let me excuse me a moment. Let me pull up the actual email that you had sent. Okay. So this is something, I'm sorry, that I left out of the question when I originally put it together. Bought the starter session. Sorry, gang. I'm getting like lost in my head. Okay, I did say that. Okay, sorry. I read over it. I read it out loud with my face and then didn't realize what I said. Yes, I did mention that. So you mentioned that he got bored with it after one session. Yeah. So on that note, relating it to them as much as possible, I think is going to make them really enjoy it a lot more. So if there's like a thing that the kid is into or like an animal that they really like, I say try to get that stuff in there as much as possible. And if you have to manipulate the existing stuff, then so be it. You know, I'm of the opinion that people should just like write all of their own stuff. But as to like editing existing stuff, go for it. I heavily encourage that. In fact, some of the more fun homebrew stuff we've done has been like tweaked module stuff. Like we've played like a one shot or a module or something that we really liked, and then it's like, oh well, what if we like put this part of it on its head and then ran that as a session? Like that can produce some really cool stuff. So I think it's really cool. It's more of what you call guidelines than actual rules. Yeah, that's true. Oh, you caught me live. Well, hey Kyle, how are you? Thank you. I'm glad you enjoy our content. Thank you for watching us for years on repeat. It's much appreciated. The starter sets are terrible modules. Yeah, I would not want... I would say you're better off with introducing the kid to D&D through homebrew, because you have a lot more control of what goes on in that. And then as they get into the game, then they can just, you know, if they want to play modules, they can play modules. I've never really been a module guy. I think it's really smart to do, actually. I think it's really cool, you know, that you're able to recognize that it's like, oh, wow, he's kind of bored of it. But then you were able to kind of tweak it. I think that that'll make a huge difference and impact on him. If you make it more, just a little more specified. I talked about that, I think, in last episode at the beginning when we were talking about magic items and about how one of my favorite things to do and have happened to me as a player is for the magic item to be incredibly specific. Even more so than just about the stats, right? Like the story, the design of the item or the look of it, the feel of it, like all of those little nuances and making it really specific. It's the same thing with a campaign, right? So it's like if you get a module and you play a module with your son, he may or may not like it. If you write a module or one shot or tweak an existing module or one shot to add like sharks to it because he loves sharks, then you have a much stronger chance, I think, of him enjoying it and retaining his interest in the game moving forward. Beginner sets are for beginners, DM and player. Don't you think the beginner stuff helps the DMs more than the players? Not necessarily. I think that the beginner stuff is important for new players too. I just don't know that the stories per se are required to accomplish those things. You know, you can just make up your own stuff and provide just as much of an easy playthrough for a new player without having to resort rather to modules or one-shots. I think you're doing a really cool thing. I say keep it up. I say get him involved with it and ask him like what he would like to see. Maybe get him to make like a little list of like 3 things that, you know, his 3 favorite mythical creatures or something. And even if you don't do it directly, so it's not as heavy-handed, like maybe you just, you know, throw a little nod to it or hints at it in game. You know, make it his adventure. That's what I'd say. That's the one sentence answer. And it sounds like you're already doing that. So what do you need me for? Thank you, Chris, for the question. Appreciate it. You and your sons have been playing, building, and creating his own story of Link. Oh, that's really cool. Been converting your Skylanders figures into D&D monsters and characters. Oh, yeah, that is really brilliant. There's a bunch of that stuff, right? Like toys in general, I guess. When can we expect to see the continuation of the Vegas saga? I do not know. We've got. I'm still trying to figure out the new show and how that's all going to work, and then also what we're looking at for this year as to what to do with the D&Ds. But I would definitely like to revisit it at some point this year and finish the story out. Oh, hey, Justin. How's it going? Hey, ya pal. Our Feelers director's here in the chat. Say hi to Justin, everybody. What's the difference between a gibbering mouther and a DM? One is a terribly disgusting creature, and the other is a monster from the Monster Manual. Yo, that's us. Anyway, thank you for the question, Chris. Let's keep on keeping on. Moving on to our next question, and where's my list of people? Here it is. This next question is from Jerry. That's Jerry with a Jerri. Jerry asks, why are mixed races in D&D only human and some other race? Why can't we have dwarven mermaids, or elven centaurs, or even orcish werewolves? Love Man Shorts, my husband and I watch every week. Thank you, Jerry. I agree. I totally agree. It's a great question, and one that I don't know if I'd considered until I read it in my email. It's a good point. We don't really see that. And I think nowadays, Nebraska, because thank you so much for your re-upping your membership and then gifting the memberships. That's so cool. That's really appreciated. Thank you for making content your wife and I watch every week and laugh out loud at. Please do Groundhog Day every year. Great tradition. Thank you, Nebraska, because you're very generous and your username is awesome. I'm glad you enjoyed the content. All right. What was I just going to? The next question from Jerry. Oh, yeah, she asked about the mixed race thing. Yeah. I think that essentially you can pretty much just do that now, right? With like the variant races in 5e. At least like you could at my table if you asked, like if you wanted to do like, half Aarakocra and half Bugbear or something. And then we just kind of like figure out the stats. I'm down for that. But yeah, it would be nice if there were more of a rules system set up for that in the mechanics or the structure of the game itself already. It'd be really nice if I think if you wanted to do it, I think what you would have to do is there a balance issue? There could be, but I think the way that's what I was going to get into, because I think that if you wanted to do it, the way that you would do it is you would say, like, this is a human. If you play it, this is what you get. Like the stats would be slightly different if you were a hybrid, so to speak, right? So like if you get bonuses from being a bugbear and you're like half bugbear and half something else, then maybe you get half of the bonuses. Of course, I guess it would depend on what the other thing was. It would get complicated. Maybe that's why we don't see it. Because, it becomes a matter of justification as to what's fair, because I'm sure that somebody would break it immediately. All bear. Yeah. The book, An Elf and an Orc and a Baby on DM's Guild. The elf and an orc had a baby. You have so many homebrew races that you use, most of which were created because your players wanted to play something not in the books. Yeah. I mean, I think at the end of the day, that's the best part about this game, is that you can just kind of make it your own thing. You don't necessarily have to follow the rules. As I talked it out and thought about it, I understood why they didn't do it in the books. And maybe they even had that discussion and it was like it got complicated too fast. Too complicated too fast. And then that's probably why they were just like, well, what if we just like did a variant and then they could just do whatever the hell they wanted and just like do it table rule, just homebrew it and like, check with the DM. I mean, it's ultimately at the end of the day, it's between the DM and the table. What's going on anywhere? Half man, half bear, half bear, half pig. A man, bear, pig. Oh, holy shit. By the way, the new episode of South Park is fire. It's funny. My wife and I were just talking about how it's been so long since we've seen South Park and how we were like really starting to miss it. And then they come along and just like home run, dude. The episode that aired the other night is just hilarious. They're so funny. But yeah, I think I agree, Jerry. I don't know why we don't see it, other than it just sounds maybe that it's complicated and it's just easier for them to say variant. You figure it out. I have not actually watched the recent episode of Last of Us. No spoilers. How would you balance a homebrew race like that to not make them OP? It's going to be, I think, between you and the DM. It's funny you mentioned that. Back in the day, in 3.5, they used to have level adjustment. And I think I've talked about this before, maybe not on this podcast, but on another podcast. I'm sure I've said it publicly somewhere before. But you used to have level adjustments in 3.5. So say, for example, you wanted to be a Minotaur. You couldn't just be a Minotaur. Minotaurs had an LA of 2. Which meant essentially that if you would subtract 2 from whatever your level was. So if everybody in the party is level 7, I was a level 5 Minotaur. Because 2 levels just get eaten. Because it's a level adjustment. So that's a way that you could keep it in check as to keeping it from being OP. Just from a mechanical standpoint with fairness and balance. But I think if you were combining, at least for me, if you wanted to combine races as to getting powers from them, there would have to be a real conversation about, like, you wouldn't be able to get, like, bonuses from both. That seems OP. Right? Like, you wouldn't be able to, like, get a strength bonus from an orc and also a dex bonus from an elf. And if you did, it would be lesser than, right? It would probably just be like a +1 to either instead of +2. So it's all relative, Depends. It's between you and the DM. Can't cross anything else with a honey badger without making it weaker. That's probably true. Dude, and also hippos. That's another thing. I don't know if anybody's seen that hippo documentary on Hulu about the Pablo Escobar hippos. So bananas, dude. Colombia has a hippo problem now. And hippos are so scary. People think, you know what it is, dude? I was thinking about this. I can't think in any animated media in my whole life that I've seen where hippos were not nice. Can you? They're always fun and nice. And like rhinos are mean a lot of the time. And like gators are usually villainous in animation. But hippos are always like super nice and fun. And hippos are so scary, dude. They'll kill you. They'll kill you. And one of the dudes in the documentary almost got killed by one. And he's like, yeah, man, everything's messed up now. He's got like rods in his leg. and walks with a cane. Hippos, dude. It is not a game. Were there mean hippos in Dumbo? Oh, that's a good question. Maybe. Although there was a lot of scary stuff going on in Dumbo. Rhinos aren't mean. They're practically blind. What's it like getting together with a gang to play 8 minutes per week? It's actually even less than that, really, since we shoot in batches. All right, let's keep moving. Talking about hippos. Thank you for the question, Jerry. Let's move on. Where's my list? Okay, this next one is from Adrian. And Adrian asks, I am a relatively new DM that seems to have a niche as a combat DM. However, I want to be able to add puzzles to my repertoire as well. What are some methods I can use to create some puzzles for my players without having to always rely on creating encounters to make sessions fun? I think that this is a thing that a lot of people struggle with. Because, especially, Adrian, well, I'm sure you haven't heard that your whole life. I think that I think a lot of people struggle with this, and it's because on the face of it, D&D seems very much like it's just like you have your moments of RP, and then you have your moments of combat. The puzzles thing, I would say, one of the things I thought of as I was thinking about this question earlier today was you might very well be able to combine the two. Right? Meaning that, like, maybe you've got them set up in such a way where they're fighting a bunch of baddies, but they have to defeat them in a certain order. You know? Or the other thing is that puzzles don't always necessarily have to be like, well, we've got to figure out how to get past this gate sort of thing. Puzzles could be something like a murder mystery dinner party. That would be fun. In fact, that's probably my favorite mission in The Elder Scrolls Oblivion, is the murder dinner party. Something like that would be super fun, and it's not really combat-centric. I mean, it is and it isn't. It's more about the puzzle and experience and less about the combat. Steven said he's done one of those. Bean says, problem I find with puzzles is that it often relies on a player knowledge and not character knowledge. That's true, too. That can get tough, especially if it's like riddles or something. I think that it takes a little bit more legwork, because if you wanted it to be best quest in the game, yeah, it's up there for sure. If you want it to be character knowledge and not player knowledge, then really the only way you could accomplish that is by sprinkling in knowledge that would then later be used for said puzzle. So it would be a matter really of baking it in directly to the campaign. But I would say that when it comes to puzzles, D&D Murder Mystery Edition, that's a good one. We could do that one. That would be really fun. Maybe one of the few advantages of some modules is their puzzles. Oh, that's a good point Robert brought up. That's actually a really good point, because I know earlier I'd sounded like I was like not being very nice to modules and like praising homebrew. And I love homebrew, but that is a good point Robert makes. That's something to be said about one-shots, modules, or really any kind of pre-written content, is that they have puzzles. So, and also, you know, like I've said this before too, kids books, like riddles books and stuff, like little like brain teasers or something. You could find those in like obviously like any bookstore, but you see them a lot in like places like the airport. What's that place in the airport? Hudson News. Any kind of library or newspaper stand, probably you could find like any of those little books, and you would be surprised, because you might be thinking like, well, this is written for a 7-year-old. That's okay, because chances are good that they're going to overthink it and miss a major point anyway. So Sorry, this is off topic. Please, yeah, I know. I want to keep Drunk Before Noon going, and I plan to. I've just been delayed doing other stuff. Ideas come from everywhere, and you don't get charged for using them at your table. Yeah, and that for sure going out to the first Chris. I say the first Chris because there's another one coming up, but the first Chris question in regards to tweaking stuff. Like, it's not illegal. I mean, it's not as if you're like profiting off of their content. You're just changing it so that you enjoy it more. So I'd say go for it. But yeah, Adrian, I'd say with puzzles, like, allow yourself some creative maneuverability when it comes to puzzles. Don't feel like it can't have any kind of combat involved in it. And also don't feel like it has to be a thing where it's like they reach an end game and that they have to get past, you know? Something like the Murder Mystery Dinner Theater could just be like a side thing that doesn't even have to do with anything. And they would probably like to do it just because it would be fun. Last puzzle I used, an unlocked wooden door. Took him 45 minutes. Yeah, I'll tell you what, too. Justin did this to us years ago when he was DMing a campaign. He put us in a room, and the room started to fill with water. And we were all, of course, freaking out. And anything that we were doing was not stopping the water from filling the room. And eventually we were all like holding our breath and like rolling con checks to like keep our breaths held. And finally, I think I'm pretty positive I was the first one to fail the con save and have to take a breath. And I was like, oh, well, this sucks because I'm going to die. And like, I just started breathing. You know? So, and I think that that's an example of something that doesn't even require a whole lot of like thought. But what Justin did is like he capitalized on the fact that we would all be so freaked out and concentrated on the fact that we couldn't breathe that we wouldn't realize that we could just try to breathe. And then, of course, you know, later we would find out it was a magical room and we could all breathe the whole time and it was part of the deal and it moved us on to the next part of the story. But you know, something that is, oh, hey, there's our friend Dale. Hey, how are you, Dale? But yeah, that I think is an example of a simple, easy puzzle that can accomplish a lot without having to go like too in depth or have to go too far away from combat. You know, that thing was something that he just threw in. It was a very small portion of the night, honestly. It was maybe 15 or 20 minutes of the 3-hour session. But it was probably the most memorable moment because we were all so scared. So yeah, hopefully that helps, Adrian. Thanks for the question. You can put people in the room with a single door and countdown timer. They won't know what to do. They don't have to do anything. When the timer ends, they can pass. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, even as something as simple as that, like the timer is enough for them to be like, what's going on? And then they have, you allow them to create their own experience at that point because they're just in the room. That's what we did with Justin. So thank you, Adrian. Let's move on. Got a couple of more questions here. This next question, the next question's from Chris. As one might guess in this podcast, that's where the questions come from. So Chris asks, if you won the lottery, what would be your first fun purchase? So this is not D&D related, but I do really like the question. Because I had to think about it for a while. Because initially it's like, I feel like most of us, when we think of, at least I'm this way, when I think of the lottery, winning the lottery, I think of all of the stuff that I would take care of. I don't actually think of like what fun stuff I would buy. Meaning like if I won the lottery, I've always thought like, okay, well, you know, I'd pay off debts and get a house and maybe travel. I think that that's going to be my answer for sure, right? That would be my first fun spend, would be a trip. Because my first real spend would just be like taking care of all of my people, taking care of all of my stuff. And then once I was done with that, I mean, that wouldn't take long, right? Like a couple of weeks, and I would probably just be set forever, depending on how much money we're talking about. But then after that, I'd probably go to like Japan or something. I think my wife and I would go to like Japan or Italy, maybe. Switzerland. We have friends there. That'd be kind of fun to go to. Justin would hire a band to follow him around and play background music for every situation. That actually sounds really cool. Although I would do it with a single clarinet player. But the stipulation would be that they are not good at clarinet. So it's just like a guy who's not very good at clarinet following me around and playing music. That would be so funny all the time. Oh, and another stipulation is that he would have to pretend to like not know me. So he would just have to like deal with the fact that I would love Italy. I bet I would. There's a lot of places in Europe I would want to go. Ireland, definitely. Japan is on my short list. Just because ever since I heard that there were 5-story arcades in Japan. Not to mention it would be really cool to see a lot of the One Piece stuff. Ooh, I'm getting a One Piece picture poster to go on the wall. Just randomly Rick Rolls. Yeah, I'd say a trip and maybe I don't know. A trip and maybe like a car that's like a type of pimp my ride car. Oh man, I saw this post the other day and somebody was like, man, Pimp My Ride was just the craziest show. Like a dude would be like, man, yeah, I really need to fix my car so I can get to work because it's a piece of shit. And then like a hard cut to exhibit being like, all right, so we turn your trunk into a fish tank. Oh, really, really crazy. Still not getting into Justin would get a new camera. Yeah, but that's not a fun purchase. I mean, it's fun for you, but it's a practical purchase. You're a filmmaker. I guess travel's kind of a weak answer too. If I was just something like if something to just be like obnoxious to spend money on, maybe like a hot tub. Maybe a hot tub. Or, I don't know. I'm not much of like a vehicle guy. I mean, I like my car. That's about as far as it goes. Monster Garage. Yeah, filmmaking's expensive. But it doesn't make it any less like your passion and gift. That's not like a fun thing. Hot tub's just part of the estate. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe like a bunch of a particular like food that I like. Like a bunch of popsicles or something. I don't know. I guess I'd have to think about it more. Jetpack. Yeah, dude, those jetpacks are cool as hell, dude. Those ones that the military uses. I don't know if anybody's seen those videos, but check that out on YouTube next time you get a second, because those things are dope. They have like, they're controlled on the arms, and it's just dudes out in the middle of the ocean on aircraft carriers just flying around on these things. Living in the future, it's crazy. Thank you for the question, Chris. Maybe I'll think about it more and try again next week and give a better answer. Fund and research to make Pokemon real. All right. We have 2 more questions. British military. A pool full of Jell-O. Ooh, I'd be down for that. I do like Jell-O. So this next question is from Pike. And I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. I certainly hope so. Pike asks, I'm part of a 4-person group and have been the forever DM forever. 6 months ago, my paladin and I decided to swap off DMing. We're having a bunch of fun not telling each other our plots, but the other players feel left out and concerned about character development. How can we work together to keep our players happy, content, and relieve fears without having to tell each other our main plots? You might not like this answer, Pike, but I don't know if you can. I don't know if you can do that. I think you may ultimately need to bite the bullet and just meta. Or rather, not meta. Which stinks, I know, is not the best answer that you want to hear, but I've thought about this actually for a little bit. And I just don't see a scenario where it doesn't become more of an issue. Olympic swimming pools of Jell-O. What flavor? Green. Lime or whatever. What was I just saying? Yeah. So I don't know if you can do that. You might be able to. But if it's bothering the other players, I don't see that improving unless you figure it out with them, how that's going to move forward. But when you're running... Whoa, man, that was Spider-Man, dude. I almost spilled water all over the place. But I didn't, because I'm Spider-Man. Sometimes you got to add someone to the insanity sessions. So when you have 2 people that are running the thing and they're not talking about the thing, it gets confusing for the other people, because even though you guys don't know what you're doing kind of like a secret squirrel thing. So like, not only I mean, it would hurt my feelings. I would feel a little left out. Oh, Adrian, thank you for the love of Drunk Before Noon. Thank you for the super chat. Much appreciated. Thank you for your generous donation. I will definitely use it to help light the fire under me to finish the scripts for Drunk Before Noon so we can get that back going. But all of that said, Pike, it's going to be really tough. This one, Avram says, draw straws to divide the party amongst the 2 of you and focus on your selections. Do you have to tell each other what y'all are doing? Yeah. The overarching story, in terms of character development, it kind of does matter that everybody know what is going on, or at least have some sort of a general direction, you know? So maybe it's not a matter of not telling each other what you're doing completely, but agreeing to operate under particular parameters. So essentially, you'd be finding a middle ground between doing what you're currently doing and just outright telling each other what you're doing. So finding some medium there where the overarching story or overarching plot that the PCs are attaching themselves to for the purposes of RP and development, that needs to be something I think that there is at least a general agreement on as to like what direction you're going. My players know before we ever hit the table session 0 that we have a lot of secrets between PCs, so it's up for them to reveal if they so choose. Tag team DM is tough without meta talking. I've done it on single weeks when our DM was off that week, but there was almost no plot. Yeah, I think you're going to have to give each other some sort of an idea of what's going on. And I think that it will then at that point be your responsibility to attach yourself to the things that you don't know so that you can continue to gain enjoyment from that while it doesn't interfere with the other players and what they're, how they feel in terms of the development of their characters. I will say that I don't know how much it could really affect the character development if you're am I to understand you mentioned that you had, let's look at the question again. You mentioned that you were in a 4-person group and recently one of them started playing with you, or rather started DMing. So I'm assuming that while the other one is DMing that you're playing, right? So I just don't understand, like, maybe it's more about having a clearer conversation with the other players, because if you're there at the table playing, you at least to an extent have an idea of what's going on and as to what their characters are doing. So maybe it's a situation where the other players really aren't so worried about character development, and it's more that they're just kind of like feeling left out and a little jealous and annoyed that you guys have got like this little secret thing going on. Because you guys are kind of playing 2 games while they're playing 1, if that makes sense. You're getting double the enjoyment. And maybe it's not really affecting them as much as they're leading on, but they're just saying that because they don't like it. I would definitely recommend talking to the other players more. It sounds overly complicated, to be completely honest with you. It sounds like it's going to end up falling apart if something doesn't change. Whether that thing is you and the other DM having a little bit more communication and agreement on where the story is going, or whether that is, just talking with the other players and being like, look, what's the real deal? Do you guys just not like us doing that? Then we'll just agree to not do it, or, go from there. But I think communication is key. Sounds like the other players want to know DM information that the Paladin now has. That could be too. That could be a part of it too, because even if you don't know what the other DM is doing, you definitely have to meta if you're playing in the game that you're also running when you're not playing it. So that's also kind of annoying to some players. The rest of the party would sometimes get annoyed with me when stuff would happen where I would be like running me and Ethan would be like running story off the side. I think that's just the nature of the party, right? Is that it's just like everybody wants to have their character feel like the main character, or at least, they want to accomplish whatever story they want to accomplish, right? And other people's stuff can sometimes get in the way of that. So Pirate says, I dual DM all the time, but it doesn't affect the gameplay because the other DMs plays off what the characters do in line with the story. Yeah. I think that the short answer is just have a conversation with the other players about this. But I think you're gonna have to concede a little bit. I think you're gonna have to give up a little bit of the secret squirrel. If for nothing else than just like general efficiency. Either that, or you're gonna have a conversation with those players where you can convince them or explain to them that, it's not something that's going to affect the character development. In fact, you might want to figure out how to argue a case for it being helpful for character development. So that's what I would say. Yeah, I personally, I don't know that there's a way that it can be done. But I would say that if it can be done, it's going to start with communication. So talk to the other DM about it. See if maybe you guys could come up with a middle ground first, and then go back to the other players and hash it out. Figure it out. Church group just decided to run a D&D one-shot, and I may have put the idea into the new DM's mind to chuck a Tiamat and Tarask at us. What do? Run. Yikes, McGillicuddy. Well, hey, that DM's going to get to do a TPK, so that'll be fun for them. Tiamat and a Tarask. You could have stopped at Tiamat. First-time players? No shot. Well, hopefully that gives you at least somewhat of a direction, Pike. It was a complicated question, and I know that I didn't give it the best answer, but that's just my opinion, you know? I think you're going to have to deal with it one way or the other. So we are down to our last question, and the last question is actually 2 slides. Because it was such a long question. Not that I mind the long questions, but let's run through this last one. This last question is from Carl. And Carl asks, my Wednesday group is pretty small. 3 players and myself, and recently one of my players got a coworker of theirs interested in playing. The issue here is that said potential player has a bébé due in a few months, and I feel like once the kid comes, they won't have time for the game. It's their first, and while I've been assured that they will be able to play and be consistent, including after the bébé comes, I find it hard to believe that with a newborn they'll be able to play. I don't have kids myself, so I can't say from personal experience how viable playing consistently would be. Should I allow them into the group, or am I just going to have a lost cause on my hands? Well, I will say, first of all, Carl, thank you for the question. First of all, I don't think that it's a question of just either one of those last 2 things you mentioned. So I don't think that you either have to, like, exclude them from the group completely, or it's going to be a nightmare. Someone says allow them in, they'll need the mental break. That's true. And here's the other thing. Obviously, first of all, I'll premise this with saying that I don't have children. Maybe one day I would like to, but I don't currently and never have. That said, I would guess that people, new parents, are probably looking for any chance away from the baby as they could get. It's not to say that they don't want to be around their baby, but it's a lot. Children are a lot, especially when they're new, because they're just like little loaves of bread and they can't do anything and they need you for everything. So yeah, maybe don't expect them all the time. Single dad, Adrian says, I'm a single dad and things come up. Yeah, I was going to say, so I don't know whether the person is having a newborn child makes a difference in this as to whether they had regular kids or whether they had like kids that were 5 or 10 or 20. Because at the end of the day, like if there's an emergency or something's going down, parents are going to go check out their kids. I mean, that's just, and I would guess most people would be understanding of that, right? Like, you know, if somebody was at your table and they had kids, I guess I'll say it to you this way. Like, would you exclude someone from your table because they had children in general? What is it about the fact that it's a newborn that makes you extra weary? Also, what kind of trauma is going on there? Have you had people like seriously abandon your sessions in the past? Lots of stuff fall apart. I mean, people have that. It's the nature of the game. But it just makes me wonder, like, you seem very like, oh, well, this is going to be a nightmare because they're not going to be reliable. I don't know that they're going to be any more reliable than anything else, than anyone else. Now, yes, obviously a newborn baby or an infant is much more hands-on in terms of parenting, I would expect, than like an older child. But their parents just the same. I think that here's how I operate, just in general, and in D&D, but I try to be this way in life. Like, for me, I try not to assume, and I try to, give people the opportunity to do until. Meaning, like, even though I have a lot of times experienced people just like blatantly lying about stuff or like not following through with what they said they were going to do, that I can't put that on somebody else, especially if you don't know them. Like, sure, it's their first child, but maybe they're really serious about wanting to play D&D and they've put it into their schedule. You don't know. I think that you won't know unless you give them the opportunity. And so then I guess the question to you is the potential of having a new member in the party, does the benefit of that to you outweigh the potential fallout of getting somebody involved and having them as major part of the story, and then 2 weeks down the line they're like, oh well, we've got some big problem and I've just got to bounce and can't do this at all? I think you have to answer that question. Is the potential of a cool new party member, does that outweigh the possibility of it falling apart? And if it does, I would definitely suggest putting in a bit of a backup plan in the event that it doesn't work out. Because, obviously everybody tries to do their best, I think, most of the time. But things happen. And maybe they really genuinely do mean that they're going to be consistent and be able to play and it's not going to be a problem at all. And then something happens and it sucks. I will say, if you prepare for the worst, then it can't hit you that hard. Meaning that, like, I would say this. I would answer you this way. I think you should let the person in, because you don't know whether or not they're going to be reliable because they've not really been given an opportunity. So I would let them in. If you do decide that you let them in, I would recommend having something in place that could operate as a bit of a backup scenario in the event that it does fall apart. That way, you're preparing the party and the campaign for it. You're also preparing yourself for it, so that even if it does happen, you're already ready. So, it can be difficult. People say stuff that they don't follow through with. I've done it a lot. I really try not to, but we just can't help it. It's just human nature. We can't see the future. We don't know what's going to be happening. So it's like, yeah, they probably really do mean that they're going to try and be consistent. And here's the other thing. Maybe they will be. Maybe you'll be pleasantly surprised. Maybe you'll let them into the game and you'll be 6 months into the campaign and they'll be your favorite player. I think you won't know unless you give them an opportunity. Having a kid's a new responsibility. If they can handle it, they can. If they can't, they can't. Yeah, I just don't think that you'll know either, since it is their first. If you had some frame of reference where it was like, yeah, this guy's, I think we'd be having a different conversation if there was some reference point where you were like, yeah, this is this third guy's child, and he has a real pattern of doing this. And it's like, okay, well, then it's a different conversation. But you don't know this person. So I think it's a little bit unfair of you to just presume that they're not going to be able to make it happen. I'd say give them a shot. The worst that could happen is that they bail, which you kind of think they're going to do anyway. So as long as you can, have some sort of a thing in place that to prevent any issues, what I would suggest is creating an NPC version of their character and just kind of like keeping that in a folder somewhere. And so then that way, if they become a major piece of the story and then something happens where they have to leave, then you can either run their player for them while they're gone, or they could just become a DMPC. So, but that's just my opinion, man, like everything else. D&D is just a game. Real kids get priority. Yeah, and that's true too. Because the other thing is, as important as the game is to you, that person's kid is more important to them. It's just going to be that's just going to be the case with anybody that has parents. And any DM that has parents in their game, you have to know. But I mean, everybody, dude, if I was playing a game and my wife had an emergency, I'd be gone. I'd be like, sorry, we're not playing. So, everybody has family and everybody has emergencies and stuff that comes up. Like me, last week I didn't stream when I should have. I'd say give him a real chance. Give him a chance to show, and you might be pleasantly surprised. And at least you could be prepared for the worst case. So hopefully that helps, Carl. All right, gang. Well, we are at the end of episode 11. We're back, A Dinosaur Story. Thank you all again so much for joining me. I am sorry that I was not here last week, but I am so glad that I was here this week to speak with all of you about all things D&D. Oh, I almost forgot. I should have mentioned this at the top of the episode, but for anybody who's still here, there's a new D&D spot for the movie that they're going to be running for the Super Bowl. By the way, can we not call the commercials that we're able to watch before the Super Bowl commercials? It's like, yeah, I get that you paid like $10 million for the spot, but also, like, is it really a Super Bowl commercial if I see it before the Super Bowl? It's more of like a commercial that's designated to play for the Super Bowl and less of like a Super Bowl commercial. I don't know. Maybe that's just me being like an old fuddy-duddy because like I remember the days of, pre-internet, and it was just like you never saw those commercials until you just saw them. Loving the bardadvice series. Thank you, Derek. I hope you have a great weekend as well. I hope everybody has a great weekend. If anybody's watching the game, I hope you enjoy it. I think it's going to be a good game either way. Two very talented teams. Pat Mahomes is a very special player, so it'll be really interesting to see how that pans out. And I'm going to also go check out probably the new Last of Us because I haven't seen that one yet, a new one. So I hope that everybody has a fantastic weekend and week. I personally, I don't really care who wins, honestly, Pirate. If I were betting, I would put money on the Chiefs, but that's just because I think that Pat Mahomes is is some kind of unicorn. But the Eagles' defense is no joke. I think it's going to be a good game. Okay. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us. I will be here next week, same Bard time, same Bard channel, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at the Man Shorts YouTube channel. And then the audio for the podcast releases on Saturdays at noon. So thank you all again for joining us. I hope that you have a fantastic evening, and I will see you next time.